All right, I now call this meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Denise, will you call roll?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Chairman Ledoux.
Here.
Vice Chair Willett.
Here.
Commissioner Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Clement.
Here.
Commissioner Souther.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Maleko.
Here.
Councilmember Rep. Maloney.
Here.
I would now ask for approval of minutes from the January 9th, 2025 special meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Denise, can you call roll?
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Souther.
Aye.
Chairman Ledoux.
Aye.
Vice Chair Willett. Commissioner Clement.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Maleko.
Aye.
I now open the public hearing for Resolution 01, Series of 2025. The provisions of the City Municipal Code, and in particular Title 17 thereof, the subdivision regulations, and the comprehensive plan of the City of Canyon City are incorporated into the record of the hearing as set forth verbatim. Can we have a staff report from the city planner?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. You will all remember that in 2021, the city adopted its comprehensive plan, and what we are going to be discussing this evening was one of the recommendations contained within the comprehensive plan. That specifically is a water master plan for the city of Canyon City, as well as a water conservation plan. So to go further into that and to guide you through the presentation, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Travis Payne. He is Canyon City's water superintendent.
Hello. So the city water department has hired JVA to develop the water master plan and conservation plan. Water rate study has also gone with it, which we won't worry about tonight. We'll focus on the water master plan and the conservation plan. JVA is here to have a presentation on both the master plan and the conservation plan, so I will just hand it to them and not waste any more time.
Good evening, guys. I'm Lily Tolvey, project manager for this project. With me is Michael Katalinich. He's our principal in charge. We went after this project competitively and were awarded back in late 2023. And all through 2024 has been a pretty big effort on working on the conservation plan and master plan for the city, as well as working with our consultant, Ruff Tellis, on the rate plan. Rate study. So one thing I wanted to just mention is this was an effort because of the grant the city received, a DOLA grant. So that was enabled the city to move forward with these two plans. And yeah, so I'm just going to get started here. So tonight is going to be an overview of the master plan and the water conservation plan. I have quite a few slides. We've presented on these two plans to the city a couple times now. So there's going to be some slides that I'll probably kind of glide over, not go into as much detail, but just wanted to still present the information. So overview, we'll talk a little bit about background. I'm going to mainly discuss the water master plan, and when I hand it over to Michael, he's going to discuss the conservation plan. We'll go through just a short slide on existing conditions as well as projected conditions, a brief analysis on the water supply. We did do a water model update, and I'll go over the results of the water model. I'll show a couple slides on the capital improvement plan and all of the projects that are recommended as part of the master plan. And then we'll discuss the current conservation measures that are in place currently, the projected and ranked conservation measures as far as that was developed with our conservation plan, and then adoption and next steps as well. So a little bit of background. This is just a geographic overview of a lot of the infrastructure the city has in place for the water treatment. This does not show all of the distribution lines and distribution system within the service area, but just wanted to give an overview of the raw supply handling with the low head pump station, the high head pump station, and the aux pump station, as well as the A pond, which is a big settling pond, as well as kind of on the top half of the screen, the a treatment plant itself with the filtration buildings. They're right next to some of the old infrastructure, the old flock basins. We've got a couple backwash tanks and some larger finished water storage tanks, as well as some backwash handling, the recycle ponds and drying beds. So this is just an overview of what you guys have in place for the treatment system. Next slide. Thank you. This is just a little bit of a breakdown on the existing demand in the system, mostly breaking down a big portion of demand is residential and non-residential, covering about
Nearly 80%.
yeah, it's about 80%, just a hair less on residential and non-residential. Then we've got smaller breakouts of the multifamily use, group users, city accounts, and the golf course irrigation. So in the projected conditions, we took a look at some different growth rates. We analyzed the previous growth in the city and kind of projected out a medium growth rate is what was selected that the city was going to see. So a medium growth rate without conservation is kind of what was selected and what was analyzed moving forward with the projected capital improvement plans. So this kind of graph just shows the different growth rates that we analyzed. Right now, the diversion is about 28,000 acre feet per year off the Arkansas. So we also wanted to just note that. One outcome of the Water Master Plan that was kind of identified is, the need for, or the potential need and recommendation of having enough storage in, need of, in time of emergencies. So that was kind of, the treatment plant is sized appropriately. There's not a worry of needing to expand the treatment plant in the future. There's some, plans for development in the area, but the biggest thing that came out of the master plan was the need for some additional storage for times of emergency. So what was kind of analyzed was potential storage options, and we've on this map here kind of identified it's a little small to see, but the Clear Creek Reservoir on the top left of the screen there, the Deweese Reservoir, which is unfortunately covered by the words there, but right where Michael's pointing, the John Griffin Park Reservoir, which is within the service area, and then the Oak Creek Reservoir, which is just kind of outside the service area. And what was kind of identified was the John Griffin Park Reservoir is selected as potentially the best option for future storage. working anymore.
Oh, let's see. Maybe we have a slide. The pointer's working. but the-
Pointer's working, but the slides don't.
the arrows not.
Try it.
Sorry, guys.
I think we may be having some battery issues.
Well, see if I can drive from.
Well, yes and no. Some of that you just skim through. It's like all the geographical location on that last packet, it's like your eyes will be buggy.
Thanks,
just-
Trev. Yeah, that worked.
Sorry about that. It's always something.
See that is your, unless I really looked at it.
We can blame this on the chief.
They used all the battery on the last
He
presentation.
used up all the battery on his last, on his presentation.
Okay, so another effort with the master plan was updating the city's water model. You had a working water model, but we moved to a new software. So we modeled everything in water gems. We started with the existing model that we had, but updated it and kind of refined everything. So what you see on the graph on the right here is a couple things. The gray line is the city's original diurnal pattern, and a diurnal pattern basically shows the water usage and demand throughout a 24-hour period throughout the day. So you'll notice kind of two peaks where it's higher usage in the morning when people are getting ready for work, and then it kind of dies down a little bit while people are at work, and then an increase at night again when people are home getting ready for bed. So the gray line shows the city's original water model diurnal pattern. The blue line shows kind of an average based on the data that we kind of input. And then the orange line is an adjusted average that was ultimately selected for the update on the water model. What became of the results of the water model is that we're missing a little bit of information. We gave the city staff a little bit of homework to go out and over the next few months, year, exercise valves, provide a little bit more fire flow data during the summertime, and then we can kind of adjust the model again and refine the results. The other kind of result that came out of it is the 4 Mile Ranch development needing some adjustments to the model scenario with that development. So there's a potential for a large transmission or a booster pump station, or still some unknowns regarding the support that the city can provide water-wise to that development.
And SADD, SAD is just summer average day demand. We love to use acronyms, so we throw them around all the time.
Oh, no. It's not working again.
Oh, but I don't see anything on display.
Off, on?
Did I get switched on?
No, it's maybe. Nope.
Maybe a proximity to,
Oh, well, we moved.
I had them print that one.
yeah, I think it's a proximity issue
Oh, you think it is?
to
We need to
the
move
room
over
in there.
I had it printed, so I could.
Well, that's the slide I can talk to, so keep it there for now. Okay, this is a little bit of a shock and awe. You're not supposed to be able to read every cell here, just kind of overall, I'll explain what this is. So what we took, we did a condition assessment for all of the items in the treatment plant, and anything related to treatment, anything related to distribution, and took kind of a condition assessment of everything that the city has currently, and then had discussions with staff on, any issues with safety or any issues with operation and maintenance, just getting a overall understanding of the system, and then lined out projects that are recommended, improvement projects, and then associated with each area of the water system, and then lined all those out, and then prioritized everything. So what we did was break things out into short-term, medium-term, and long-term projects. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a list of project numbers, and then a description of each of those projects. You'll see kind of on each on the rows, there's a kind of a light purple row, and there's a short-term, medium-term, and long-term listed out there. Each project is associated with a different category, whether it's raw water or treatment or backwash handling or distribution. So we wanted to make sure we could categorize each of the projects. Each project as well had a cost associated with it. Each project has a $2024 amount to it. And then in that prioritization, we put a year to be completed. So all of the columns on the right-hand side is each year pushed out from 2026 to, I think it's 2050. So it's about 24 years of projects. So when we project out to say there's a raw water project that we're projecting to be completed in 2030, we projected the cost as well out to $20-30, and we did that for each project, so that this can be used by city staff for budgeting purposes. This is not, mandated, you must do this project at this time, but this is our attempt of, trying to get, even things out, not wait to complete everything in 1 year, trying to kind of even out the budgeting and the costs of, of running a water system for the city. Thanks, guys. So that's what this big table shows, is just all of the projects listed out, a cost associated with each project, and then what we'd recommend the city does as far as timeline. And some of these projects are recurring. So the filters at the water plant, they need to be, the gravel needs to be redone, 15 years. So that recurrence is also shown here, if that is applicable. The next 3 slides is just kind of a breakdown of, I'll go through these pretty quickly, short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and kind of the number of projects associated with each year, and then the total cost of that year in Prison Worth. So we tried to even things out. This is about $2 million up to $6 million per year for the short term, 2026 to 2030. The medium term is 2031 to 2040. This is ranging from 2 to 5 projects per year, about 1 million, 2 million, to a pretty large 12 million project on 2040. That is specifically a replacement of distribution system piping and service line replacement. The city is definitely hoping to get some grant funding to help with that project. Long-term, 2041 to 2050, we're kind of lower on the number of projects for this time frame, as well as lower on cost, kind of projecting that a lot of the main high priority projects have kind of been completed by this time. So those are only ranging from about 800,000 to about 2.5 million.
We might pause there. So
Yeah.
that, I mean, that's a high-level summary of the Water Master Plan. Really what it is it's sort of a living document that's a planning tool for the city. Working closely with Travis, trying to identify all the projects that we can envision that are needed for the water system and when those might happen. Another reason why you see less happening further out is it's really hard with the crystal ball to determine accurately what's going to be needed in 2045 today. But we might just pause there and see if anyone has any specific questions on the master plan component of this presentation.
On the dollar amounts you put for a lot of those future years, was that today's value of dollars, or was that a future value?
Future value.
We've brought everything back, like there's a column that puts the future value in 2024 dollars, but then it's inflated for however many years forward at that assumed rate.
And earlier, when you mentioned future storage, unless I overlooked it, did you recommend an amount, a size, or?
We did not recommend an amount or a size.
Okay.
No, not at this time.
I think there's a recommendation to do some additional evaluation, to look at the feasibility of the storages available. And I think that the important thing to note with the recommendation for storage is while the diversion, is much greater than what the demand has historically been, there are times if the river's frozen where we may not be able to divert, or during a drought, we may not be able to divert that amount. And that's where the additional storage gives there some additional reliability and redundancy to the city for raw water storage and supply during those times of emergency, which is a big part of that recommendation.
Right, and I was just curious as to brainstorming, but you answered that with the more evaluation of that. Thank you.
With your capital improvement, does the city have money to pay all of this? And where's the money going to come from? And what kind of impact will that have on future rates? Because you were talking about major investments.
Part of this study was also including a rate study evaluation. I know we didn't want to get into too much detail tonight about it, but it is not quite finalized yet. Is that right? We're still seeing what that impact is on ratepayers in the future, but I think the intent was to kind of bring forward a plan of the next 5 years to kind of solidify what rate impacts would be over the next 5 years.
Yeah, it was actually 10 years.
10 years, excuse me.
But the water rate study takes into account a lot of the water master plan, specifically the capital improvement plan. So now we have a basis of how much things are going to cost for capital improvement projects. We have a very good understanding of what our yearly operations and maintenance budgets need to be. So now we have a great idea of what money we need to be taking in to be able to pay for the necessary improvements. So that water rate study is going to outline what those water rates need to be adjusted to year over year to pay for the needed work.
You'll have to probably borrow too, though, won't you?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're talking about for 2 of the potential major projects we have coming up. One of them being water main replacement in conjunction with the 2A projects that we have, the street reconstruction is 2A. So a lot of those major thoroughfares have aging water infrastructure under the ground, and in order to spend the money out wisely to reconstruct streets, we ought to, replace the aging infrastructure that's underneath it so they don't have water main breaks underneath a brand new street. So to kind of keep up with that and replace those needed water mains, we're going to do we just applied for a loan through CDPH&E to be able to pay for some of those very large water main upgrades. I think the loan we're chasing right now is somewhere around $6 million. Some of those engineering costs have to be kind of shored up, but that's around what we're going to be asking for. Taking on loans is appropriate sometimes because we actually ran the water rate analysis 2 ways, not taking on loans and taking on loans. And in order to get the revenue necessary to do those really big projects, instead of paying for them over the long term, would require, if I remember right, it was a 25% and a 15% water rate increase year 1 and 2. By taking on those loans, it was 7% year 1, year 2. So it really evens out how much revenue we need to be taking in. So it's an important thing to consider. Generally, loans are not, they have kind of a bad connotation, but they are appropriate sometimes.
So with your annual budget, I presume that you put together, or you put aside some money for your capital improvements in the future. Is that
That's
how you
correct.
budget that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we want to build up our reserves to have that money, because as much as we can try to look into the future, there's also things we just don't know about.
And I can circle back to that previous question. We do, the plan does give estimate of storage volumes for each of the alternatives. The John Griffin Park, the estimated storage there is 500 acre feet. I always say this wrong, Deweese?
Deweese, you got it.
About 3,500 acre feet. Clear Creek Reservoir is about 900 acre feet, and the Oak Creek Reservoir is, I don't see it.
Oh.
I think out of all that, he wants you to speak into the mic so you can get it.
Is the mic on?
Sorry. Yeah,
Yes,
you
I'm
gotta-
just not speaking.
You gotta be
I'm
pretty
sorry,
close.
I gotta speak up. So, 500 for the preferred alternative, 500 acre feet, 3,542 for Deweese, 900 acre feet for Clear Creek Reservoir. And the Oak Creek Reservoir, was recommendation for some additional preliminary design. I'm not seeing the acre foot for storage, but.
Yeah, Clear Creek is not a reservoir that exists right now. It's a potential reservoir that would need to be kind of figured out a little bit more. And the Deweese numbers, I think, are the existing reservoir. The project that's being pushed forward for Deweese is a reservoir expansion, and I think that expansion actually adds about 1,500 acre feet. So we would work with Deweese Ditch in maybe paying for some of that expansion and in trading for some of those storage rights.
I thought you had mentioned that the John Griffin was like your top, suggestion. What would it look like to pursue having more storage at the John Griffin Reservoir?
So our next step is going to be a feasibility study. So we have to show that it's a viable project. A, can we do it? And B, at what cost? And so we're going to be pursuing CWCB grant funding to pay for a feasibility project to answer those questions. We have an idea. It seems like a good idea, but we need to make sure that it's going to be cost effective.
What is so Deweese, obviously on Grape Creek, but that is actually upstream, or the confluence with Grape Creek is downstream of the hydraulic ditch diversion. How would you actually?
So we would look at creating a new diversion and pumping it or gravity feed underneath the river. So when we're talking about these alternate source of water, we need it to be a true alternate source. If the river were ever become polluted with turbidity, so we're talking like burn scar runoff that may deem it unusable for drinking water or at a high cost, more chemical, things of that nature. We want a true alternate source, so we would need to create a diversion in Grape Creek, go underneath the river, underneath the railroad, underneath the ditch, and bring it in here. So it's an alternative, but those things are costly. It's also costly to pump the water back from John Griffin up to the treatment plant. So those are the things that have to be evaluated.
Because do we have water rights that would be I guess, attainable at Deweese Reservoir?
So I believe so. I think we can use our project water for Deweese. I have to do way more figuring on that. It's a lot easier to do off-channel on the Arkansas River. For the John Griffin Park, we can use project water that we currently store in Pueblo Reservoir and do it in an administrative exchange and slowly fill that reservoir up. Now that, again, would be for emergency use. That would not be a daily use reservoir. So the idea would be having that open to recreation, that being kind of a benefit to the community, but in times of extreme need, we would be able to drain it for drinking water. That's the idea as it exists right now.
Any other questions from the commission before we continue?
Okay, well, we're nearly to the end. I've only have 3 slides. Lily did the heavy lifting, so I'll scoot forward so you can hear me a bit better. Travis mentioned CWCB, the water conservation plan. You know, the reason why we did the water conservation plan is kind of threefold. One, the last water conservation plan was 1996, and it was ready. We were due for an update on the water conservation plan. 2, in order to go after CWCB grant funding for things like a feasibility study on the reservoir, they want to see that the city has an updated water conservation plan. So we updated the plan in accordance with CWCB guidelines, and assuming that we get acceptance of the document by the city, we would then go for acceptance of the document by CWCB. And thirdly, it just gives it, like the other document, the master plan, it's a guidance document available to the city that provides some recommendations on different conservation measures that can be implemented, so that if we are in times of drought or if there are other drivers for implementing water conservation, this document is kind of a good starting point for what are the water conservation measures available, how effective do we think they might be. From the 1996 GEI plan, there were 9 measures that were identified. This was the first water conservation plan that we know of that the city had developed. Ranked, I don't know if they're ranked in any particular order. Low water use fixtures, efficient landscape irrigation, water efficient industrial and commercial water using processes, water reuse systems, leak detection and repair, education, differing watering rate structures to encourage use by structuring it so that people are paying more, who are using more, regulatory measures, and incentive programs. What JVA did is we updated the conservation plan, and we identified 10 measures, some of which were previously, maybe they were modified or revamped from the previous conservation plan. But we then did an evaluation on what we believe the possibility of how much the measure of the conservation or the program could save and how much that would cost per 1,000 gallons of water saved. So using that cost per 1,000 gallons saved, we ranked the conservation measures and programs from number 1 to number 10, so that you know, the biggest bang for the buck really is pressure management, a good extensive leak detection and repair program, and continual testing of meters and replacement of meters, as well as audits. Then you get into some of the other programs like water restrictions, additional regulations for landscaping, turf, either permits for new landscape or standards for construction of irrigation, turf and landscape, irrigation scheduling, irrigation audits and rebates, and then finally a turf replacement program were the 10 measures that were identified and ranked. And then finally we have sort of a recommendation for how the plan could be implemented. And what we did is we took the 10 measures and we kind of broke them into 3 different categories. So the 3 rows are maintenance, audits, rebates and incentives, and regulations and standards. And then within those 3 categories, we took the 10 programs and we identified Again, short-term, medium-term, and long-term would be our recommendations, with the three programs shown to be the lowest cost per gallon saved being the ones that are recommended to be implemented first. The medium-term measures are irrigation audits, water audits, and a turf replacement program, and the long-term measures, which are regulation and standards based, are water restrictions, hours or days, additional standards for new construction, the lawn permits for new landscaping, and irrigation scheduling. And at a really high level, that's a summary of what we have in our water conservation plan. So I might pause again and ask if anyone has any questions on what's been presented there.
I guess if part of the decision for prioritizing was on the cost value, turf replacement was the most expensive, but it seems like water restrictions of hours and days is a little bit more of a standard procedure and less costly. Is there a reason why you put that on a water restrictions to 11 to 20-year plan?
Well, part of the reason was there's really not an appetite for instituting any kind of regulation when it comes to irrigation, right? So it's kind of almost like a wait and see how the state goes about this sort of thing. So one of the things they're focusing on right now is turf replacement, non-functional turf. You might have heard these terms thrown around. It's becoming kind of the vogue thing to do. So turf replacement would be offering a program where they could have a grant through the city and saying, okay, you have high water usage through non-functioning turf in a commercial building. Can you replace that with a living garden? Not necessarily xeriscape. That's kind of gone away because they've found that it's better to have some amount of shrubbery around rather than just rock. So, can there be incentive programs to reduce the amount of water usage on non-functioning turf and help water conservation that way? So I think that why it's a long-term thing is we're just kind of waiting and see, what is the appetite for that sort of thing going to be in 10 years? Because I don't think there's an appetite right now. It's not purely a cost-driven decision.
Okay. And the water restriction, you're thinking more of an irrigation restriction on time, not necessarily residential?
Yeah, and we would like to see those things instituted in an emergency, if and when type of thing. So if we are in a strong drought year, maybe that's the more appropriate place, not overall telling people when they can and can't water, but just when necessary. If we're in an extreme drought year, maybe those things are more appropriate, but not just day to day.
Is that the same philosophy as far as the appetite for having permitting for new landscaping?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've seen a few other programs around. I think Fountain has one, and they center it more around new taps. So they have kind of a water tap structure in that they have a reduced water tap for developments that put in water-wise landscaping versus you can do whatever you want, but it's going to be a higher tap. So there's incentive programs for that side of thing too.
Incentivization. Okay.
Yeah. So if they want a lower tap fee, they can do the additional work to put water-wise landscaping in.
What about water conservation plans for the city parks and landscaping? Because we have a lot of water usage ourselves, and as an example, I saw in the writing there's an example a lot about how the police department did a good example of what it would look like. But I mean, we could also be a good example of how we could use less water at our parks or in our other facilities as well. Was there any considerations or talks about that?
Yeah, we've talked about that a couple times at Water Committee, in that, the first people that should be doing that should probably be the city, right? Where there's a lot of opportunities for replacing non-functional turf on city properties, and we would like to start with us.
I know the governor did have some money that was going to municipalities for turf replacement and things like that. And they had recommended that actually the cities use that for their own facilities, so it could be more impactful. Are you familiar with
I am,
that?
yeah. I've been kind of keeping abreast. We're just not quite there yet to be able to go for those funds.
One other, I guess, follow-up on the city accounts, which I'm assuming is city parks and irrigation, is a slide that Lily presented early on in the master plan, I have it on my screen, we could go back to it, showed that the 6% of the existing water demand is that. And a lot of times when we're implementing conservation measures, we might target like, let's see if we can achieve a 10% reduction in demand. So maybe it would take it from 6% to 5.3% or something. It might end up being like, it's certainly noticeable, but that's why I think part of the focus is really on, you know, the distribution system too, you know, leaks and meters and things like that, because that's really where a lot of the bigger bang for the buck is, I guess.
When it comes to water line leaks and faulty meters, what is your process and program for doing that? Is that just based on, oh, we discovered a leak, so now we're going to fix it? Or is there more proactive, like, we feel like there could be leaks in this area, let's see what we can?
Currently, it's, oh, there's a leak, let's go fix it. There is more proactive programs that we can do. There is leak detection programs out there. You know, you can use, not thinking of the right word, but basically you're putting sound detection equipment on, and then you can kind of triangulate through water or fire hydrants where a leak may be, and then you can do a little more exploratory digging. So there are things that you can do, that we can do. We just haven't, and you know, those are pretty big undertakings. I think we want to start with other recommendations of like valve turnings and things like that are going to be helpful in other areas, not necessarily conservation, but we need to put our resources
Can you tell me
wisely.
more about the valve turnings and how that is a water conservation?
Yeah,
tool?
it's not a conservation, but it's just another important thing that we need to do for our system. So
That's just-
well, a lot of municipalities have valve turning programs, and it's a very important thing. So when we have a water main break, we don't want to spend a bunch of times trying to figure out which valves are working or not. And so you're losing more water through a water main break. If you're hunting valves at work, you might have to shut more people off if a certain valve on a block, well, you got to go another block back to find a working valve. So you're turning more people off. You know, I mean, it's not only conservation is just an important thing for us to be able to do.
Just looking ahead to the water rate study, is part of the conversation about, so let's say the city is using about 6% of the water. I know there's been conversation on the city council level that currently the city's not technically paying for that water to the water fund. And there's a conversation that the city should be paying the water fund for that. That would really drastically affect the general budget as well. Are there conversations on how, if that scenario was to come to pass, how those impacts would be? And also, is another argument for why we need to conserve more water for what the city's using.
Yeah, Water Committee, January, next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about that. So we have kind of the water rate structure as far as, you know, what we need to pay for our capital improvement projects and things like that. So the next conversation is fairness across customer classes. Who should be paying what share of those water rates? And so that's going to be a big topic, not only the city accounts, but the golf course. So those conversations are upcoming. Yeah. And I would point out the city accounts are kind of tough. You know, there's a lot of water usage in parks, and no one's suggesting that we should dry up our parks or anything like that. One of the major users is the cemetery, which you know we have. That's a perpetual care cemetery. We can't, nor should we, dry up a cemetery. So where the conversation then leads is how can we start using raw water? Like, do we ditch shares to then water that, not dry that turf up, but use alternate sources of water that's cheaper to irrigate that land.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you know what percentage of the water goes to the East Canyon complex and to Territorial?
Not offhand, but I could get those numbers.
I would think it would be pretty large. I mean, they
Yeah,
have-
they're definitely, I don't know about the East Canyon complex specifically, but DOC is certainly our largest water user in the area.
And do we work with them at all about, I mean, can we control anything they do or work with them about conservation?
No, we can't control anything they do. You you know, the way that you would be able to do that is through water rate structuring, which we currently do, not for commercial, but for residential,
And which customer class do they fall under?
commercial.
Commercial?
Yeah, they don't have their own customer class, they're considered commercial, non-resident. So they do pay for their water, but they also use a ton of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any staff that's dedicated for water conservation?
No.
Are there plans to have any staff?
If it becomes an important thing that we want to institute, then we'll probably have to add, maybe not a full-time employee just for conservation, but maybe some kind of program manager for things like water conservation. So staffing would definitely need to be consideration in being able to institute these water conservation measures in a whole.
I guess the next question is that a priority to the water department?
Yes, you know, I wouldn't say it's our top priority. You know, our aging infrastructure is a big priority, and that's where we're trying to focus a lot of time and resource in. Through the water master plan, it has shown that in average to years of you know, the river flowing, our raw water rights are not necessarily a worry, right? There's a lot of municipalities out there that don't have great water rights, that they need to focus on water conservation, because when you're talking about water shares, you have demand management and resource management, right? So they're having to do cost-benefit analysis of how much water does it, or how much money does it cost to acquire new water versus how much does it cost to preserve the water that we have. We don't necessarily have to do that, so that's where it drops a little bit in our priority versus, you know, taking care of our aging water infrastructure. But it's important to have a plan, so, you know, we can attack low-hanging fruit as we can. You know, we do have meter readers, so should we be utilizing them more for meter testing, replacing new meters? I mean, those are the things that we can do with existing staff.
I guess for the John Griffin concept of reservoir, is there a concept for a diversion point? And I assume that would be pumped off of the river.
Yeah, the hope would be gravity fed, right? You don't want to use electricity to fill the reservoir. So either way, I mean, there's going to have to be a pump station there to pump the water back up to the treatment plant. So if that pump station has to be utilized in some capacity to fill the reservoir, then, you know, that's going to have to be one of those things in a feasibility study. Can we put a diversion point higher up on the river so we can gravity feed it? You know, does the cost of that outweigh the cost for electricity to run a pump? I mean, all those things will be spelled out in a feasibility study.
And I guess, do we have a good, 500 acre feet? I guess, I mean, do we have a concept depth and then thus surface area?
Yeah, surface area is looking at 25 acres and with a depth of 20 feet to get to your 500 acre feet.
Sounds like some good paddle boarding.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea, non-motorized wreck, I should say. I don't know if it's gonna be enough for, speedboats or anything like that, but, paddle boards, kayaking, fishing,
Yeah,
things
that'd
like
be
that.
amazing.
So, yeah, it has a potential to be a nice economic boon too,
I think we just had one more slide, which was next steps. As we understand it, the next steps are to get formal adoption of the Water Master Plan, the Water Conservation Plan, and the rate study, followed by CWCB approval of the Water Conservation Plan, after which we'll submit a cover letter and the final plan. And then we would expect to receive a letter of approval from CWCB within 3 months of submitting it to them.
Does the CWCB actually require any kind of implementation of the plan, or do they just say, nice plan, should you ever need it, there you go? Or is there, you have to do anything?
Yeah, through conversations with them, it's not like they check up on you to see how you're doing with water conservation implementation. They want to see the plan in place so you know what to do, should you want to do it.
Well, it sounds like it's also to get funding and grants.
Yeah, I mean, they do have that kind of leverage they can put. Well, if you want funding and grants, which they have a very large pot of money for fundings, for grants, you know, you gotta have this program in place, adopted. There are other, I'm pretty sure that the CDPH&E for their loan program that we're going through, we also had to answer the question, do you have a water conservation plan? You know, why we're here tonight, the city's comprehensive plan has to have this in. So, you know, we didn't go in knowing that, but thankfully the attorneys caught that and said, oh yeah, you guys need to get before the planning commission and you guys need to adopt this by July 1st, 2025. So that was a nice benefit as well.
Yeah, I think you had the 96 plan. 96 plan was, you know, what was in place, but I don't think there was any follow-up from CUWCB being like, are you acting on it? What are your measures in place from that plan? I think it had just been long enough time that an update was required.
Do you anticipate that you will do any of these things? Or is this just a formality?
Yeah, very much. I mean, water conservation is a good thing, you know, so I would very much like to institute what we can.
Seems like with the conversations with the scarcity of water, especially in Colorado, that it's going to be crucial.
Absolutely, and I think that's the way, you know, we're trending, for sure. I mean, the water's going to become more and more valuable, so you're going to have to show beneficial use to the water you are using, and I think, in my opinion, I think it's going to become more of a mandate to conserve water.
I think we'll be coming from the state to have more mandates, and it's going to be more and more expensive, and so it's just also prudent and wise to cut those costs by being more conservative.
Any other questions from the commission? Seeing no public, I will assume there's not any comments from them. Accordingly, I now close the public hearing. Given that there's no further discussion from commission, I would now call for a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 1, Series of 2025, as addenda to the city's comprehensive plan.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I move that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 1, Series of 2025 by title with the exhibits Resolution 1, Series 2025, the City of Canyon City Water Master Plan, and the City of Canyon City Water Conservation Plan.
Here's the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a second. Denise, what do you call roll? Yeah, doesn't matter.
It could be
It was a tie.
triple tie.
Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Vice Chair Willett,
Aye.
Chairman Ledoux,
Aye.
Commissioner Clement,
Aye.
Commissioner Souther,
Aye.
Commissioner Malenko,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Are there any announcements or discussion items?
The next Planning Commission meeting is going to be February 26, 2025. I have asked Rick Harmon to come give you a presentation on his economic development efforts as well as his efforts at recruitment for multifamily residential. I know that that was a topic of interest that the Planning Commission had asked for last year, and this is now the first opportunity we've had to get Rick here to present to the Planning Commission.
Okay. And with that, we are adjourned.